4 fantastic women out here. Can we have a huge round of cheer to welcome all of them one more time? And with that, Tanya, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I promise that the next 40 minutes or so is going to be totally worth your while. We're going to try and keep this as interactive as possible. So the way I thought we could do this was maybe just, get like broad ideas from our ladies here, and then I could even open it up, in the middle of the discussion to questions, and then we can come right back and, have another round of questions. So let's see how this goes, ladies. Thank you. Let's actually just launch right into it, and I thought we could start by getting a good sense of, where the three of you stand as far as this fine balance between technology and creativity is concerned. As a consumer, if I was to look at how things have changed in the way a lot of companies are sort of hawking their products to me now, is just so much more targeted, right? There's this targeted marketing that we're seeing, as opposed to, I think, what you folks call spray and pray, and a lot more mass market. So Rashi, let me begin by asking you, as a brand and as a marketer, do you believe there's a fine balance now that one has to sort of maintain between technology and creativity?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the way I'd like to start by answering your question is indeed, so even 5 years ago, right, when we marketed, it was a spray and pray approach. We tried to target masses of consumers, got an insight, and just put a TV ad out there. But with programmatic buying, now everyone is doing programmatic buying. And the first mover probably thought, I can address my creativity to the demographic or psychographic that I want to conquer. But now it's a sea of sameness. Everyone's doing that. So now again, things have caught up, and we have to strike a balance between creativity, because now creativity again becomes a differentiator. So I think that balance will continue, and the guy who does it first with technology wins, but he or she only has a short-term sort of advantage, and then creativity must take over and become a differentiator again.
Sapna?
Yeah, so I think what we were talking about before is we're all going to be on the same page that it has to be a balance. I think as CMOs, you need to have a balance between all sides. And if I think about the debate, right, is data hurting creativity? From my point of view, it's only helping, and it's making us be better marketers. If I think about, the things do start at the heart. There's obviously behavioral insights, human insights that are the heart of marketing. And if you think about it, creativity is the heart of marketing. But if you look at it, data and science can be the arms and legs. And that's like the new dimension that's being added to the work that we're doing, such that I think we're taking kind of the insights that we've had and building on it further. You can say that creativity is the most important, and people have built great campaigns, creatives, without any bit of data. But they've also created terrible ones. And if you don't have data to be able to basically verify, and I think that's some of the best work that's happening now is because we're able to use data to kind of vet, are things working? We're able to use data to make things contextual. Right time at the right place, that is the essence of being a great marketer. Right message, right time, right place, right customer. And now with data, we can actually do it versus just talking about it, philosophically. I'll just point to one example, which I think is like kind of, if I think about this question of balance of data and creativity, British Airways had done a campaign a while back called Look Up. I think we have a picture of it, where they had a really strong creative insight that people look in the sky and they see planes going overhead and they wonder where's that flight going, and it makes them think about their own journeys and the destinations that they could go or have been. And what British Airways did was they married data with that. So when the flight was actually going over these billboards near Heathrow, it actually would have a little child pointing up. I'm not sure if we're showing the picture, but and that little boy saying, that's the British Airways flight 594 on its way to Barcelona, right? And what it did was it took this marriage of a huge creative insight that really inspires people, and you need to have that. But at the same time, who would have ever thought that out of home could be contextual and use data in such a powerful way. So I think that's the beauty of kind of our jobs today, which has made it more interesting.
Gunjan, what about you? You folks, I mean, at Myntra and Jabong have the power of data more than I think anybody does, right? You know exactly when Tanya is on Myntra, what she likes to buy, what's the time of the day that she's typically browsing, how much money she spends. So you've got all the data, but have you been able to also effectively tell creative stories around it?
So, Tanya, I think on your question, whether creativity is now taking a backseat, because technology is allowing us to at least target our communication much better. I think it's actually completely the other way around. If anything, the bar on creativity has actually gone up, right? Now, exactly because I know what Tanya does, and Tanya also thinks that I know, therefore, if I reach out to you with something that seems plain vanilla, you're not going to be happy. Right? So actually it's, the reason we need as marketers to be even more creative in this day and age is because the expectations are going up. Right? And yes, it is true that the personalization is also allowing creativity to be unleashed because I do have better information, to the point Sapna was making earlier, to inform my creativity, right? And I'm able to do stuff like this British Airways thing. We did actually something very similar, in Bombay with outdoors, when we launched a lot of international brands. And with every flight coming, we sort of tagged it to saying, hey, just arrived Marks and Spencer on Myntra, or just arrived Forever 21 on Myntra, right? So there are interesting ways that technology is allowing us to interact with our consumers, but the bar is certainly going up several notches, right? I think the other thing that technology is doing, and people don't realize it, is that it's actually creating what I call a somewhat more level playing field. And that's not what data is providing, but it's more digital as a medium is providing, right? So I would argue that, 5 years ago, yes, you needed to be creative as a marketer, but you also needed to have very deep pockets, right? And both played almost an equal role in getting you the reach that you needed, and of course, the impression was only made with creativity. But today, especially on the digital medium, if you do have a very strongly powerful creative, it can travel on its own, right? And therefore give you 2x, 3x better reach than it would have ever done in the old traditional offline-only mediums, right? And therefore, again, and that's what I keep telling my team, right? I mean, we don't have all the money in the world. We are not a horizontal player. We are a focused vertical player. But can we use our creativity to really buck the trend? And we are seeing some beautiful examples of brands and companies hitherto completely unheard of being able to use that power and the power of their own creative imagination to actually come out there and stand out, right? And not just in the marketing world, from CMO perspective, I see that happening with agencies, right? There's a whole bunch of agencies and technologies that have evolved who earlier were non-existent, because now you have a completely new medium to tell your stories on. So I think in conclusion, from my standpoint, the bar on us is even 5x higher. We need to do a great job on creativity.
Okay, so it seems to me that at least our ladies here sort of agree that whether it's automation, artificial intelligence, or technology, it's not going to replace human creativity, but perhaps only enhance it. But let's talk about how effectively marketers, Rashi, have managed to do it. How effectively would you say at Nestle, have you managed to sort of integrate these data strategies to be able to tell more effective stories, better the craft of storytelling?
So before I get into what Nestle is doing, I just want to comment a little bit more, because I think the conversation is going really well, and we sort of all agree that creativity is a growth engine, it's a driver, it leads to shareability, there are new sort of agencies coming up, etc. Now, if we really look at the question that this panel discussion was created to answer, this is a question that we've been debating since time immemorial, right? It's the left brain versus right brain question. It's the art meets science question. And what we are really saying is that creativity is born at the cusp of two very divergent fields, right? Now, how do we make it effective to answer your question? So before I come to Nestle, I want to just share 3 examples of how globally people are doing it. So how do you play with this creativity, technology meets data, right? So the first example is saying, have data, we'll make ads around it, right? Which is what companies that have a lot of data will do. So I want to show an example of Spotify. Before we play the ad, so Spotify, of course, as you know, has a lot of data, and they wrapped 2016 by taking the data and creating lots of personalized creatives at scale, which actually talked about how users had behaved on their platform. So could we have the Spotify film first, please? So this is one way of doing it, right?
How do you wrap up a year like 2016? In a year that felt like it was all about our differences, Spotify tuned in to the listening data of its over 100 million users to remind us we're all a little bit weird. We started with an out-of-home campaign that was at once global and highly localized, showing what people listened to during Brexit, Valentine's Day, nights out, and in inappropriate ways. We told 164 unique data stories in the exact neighborhoods where the listeners lived. Then, we spread the message online, showing that it wasn't just our listening habits that were weird, it was the music too. On social, we took a weirdly scientific approach to the year's top hits, like how many dances Drake needed, the year in weird spelling, and the emotional roller coaster that was Bieber's hair. Next, we personalized the campaign to each user with an email recapping their year in listening with stats on who they loved, when they loved it, and a unique playlist with their favorite songs of the year. Then, we partnered with top artists to reward the fans who listened more than anyone else. Like Trapping Paper, for the biggest streamers of trap music, Sienta hats, for Sia fans, and for the biggest corn fans, Cornaments. All the gifts were announced through a series of social films. Our year-end campaign received over 1,500 pieces of news coverage, generated 1.2 billion earned impressions, and over 1 billion streams. And during its run, Spotify's subscription growth easily broke all company records. Thanks, 2016. It's been weird.
Right, so the question that this begs is what came first, data or the idea? I would argue that the data came first, right? The second example I'm going to show you, I absolutely love, because here, I think the idea came first. So could we have the Nike video?
Running is in Nike's DNA. It's at the heart of the brand, so we wanted to create an experience to challenge the concept of the run itself.
超正確な RFID システムを用いて1周目のラップタイムを測ります。2周目より LED スクリーンにアバターが出現。アバターは1周目のラップタイムで並走し、アバターに勝つと新しく更新されたベストタイムでアバターが走り、自分の最高記録をさらに超えられるよう自分に挑戦することができます。
Competition, because you're not just beating a light or your watch, you're beating almost like an actual person.
Pacer からナショナルレコード、ナイキのエリートアスリートたちの記録をもとにアバターのライブラリを構築し、コーチたちは8つの基礎トレーニングに合わせてモードを選択することができます。
Sing with me into the
matututo yung runner ng tamang pace. Here, it's not the usual track oval. Medyo hirap na yung uphill.
We knew we were building something very magical, but when it first kind of turned on and started working, we were all like, oh my God.
An athlete's greatest competition is always themselves. Our ambition was to bring our athletes face to face with themselves.
Right, so I think this is really what this panel discussion is about, and this could probably be the vision, right? It's on brand, it's in service to the consumer. The idea came first, and they are not just using data, they're using biometric data. And I think this is the future. So what would you say the balance is here? Everything is in perfect balance, and it probably drives business for them as well. So the point that I'm making is, I think we've got to all start thinking what comes first. And as usual, the consumer, the brand, the insight, and his and her tensions come first. That needs to be unlocked with creativity. And whether it's programmatic buying or data or biometric will drive it.
So Sapna, effectively, you've got this pool of data, but it's really no good if you don't know what to do with it, right?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And as Google, it's something we face all the time. The amount of data that we have across our products, how do we make sense of it? And I think to come back to your question on how do we think of our teams and what they're doing, it requires a different level, a different skill. I think the great thing is yesterday here we shared some research that we've done with BCG and Nielsen on programmatic, and what it does is it creates efficiency. So marketers can become 30%, let's say, more efficient, because a lot of the, what I would call annoyance of marketing goes away. And things can, if you're using data correctly and you're working through programmatic and other pieces, you get to work on the things that are centered around innovation more, because some of the inefficient waste of time kind of media planning pieces that aren't the things that marketers get really excited about go away. And instead we need to reskill our teams on how to think of these kinds of ideas. And it requires a new way of thinking. And that's what I think, coming back to your question on how we think about our teams, investing in resources, et cetera, that's where we need to invest our time. Over time, I don't see this as a question. I think there's always this debate on, will we need less people on our teams with this, or will, is automation going to harm the future of our workplace? The way we see it is that it's helping us focus on the things that marketers actually like. That my team is happier, not focusing on the mundane, but focusing on the innovation. And I see our satisfaction as a team going up as a result. So what we used to think as stream two, like a post you make the film, post you have the creative insight, post you have the media plan, then you do the innovative stuff. We've actually brought that forward and said, let's start thinking about these kinds of ideas on day one when we look at the data and the insights and bring it together.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that we somewhere run the risk of losing the human touch? And I'm not just saying it when it comes to creativity, but even as a consumer. Let's say, when you traditionally bought clothes, you'd want to sort of touch and feel and try it on, and that's completely gone out. I think more and more of us in this room would attest to the fact that we're doing a lot of online buying. So similarly, when it comes to again, telling creative stories, is there a fine balance that you sort of see, or would you be in agreement with the other two ladies here that it's only making us sort of think more creatively?
So, maybe I'll make two completely diverse points or examples, and that might help us, decide which way the world is tilting in a way, since we want this to be a debate, really, right? So I think the first is that personally for me, and what the work that we are, really proud of doing at Myntra and Jabong is really using the power of technology and data to do personalization at the level of n equal to 1. Right, and this has been like almost the holy grail of marketing, where you ideally want it, right? We all know that each individual is highly unique, right? but we've sort of always been forced to paint them with, the same brush because we didn't have mediums to be able to personalize and talk to you effectively, right? First, we didn't even know your unique aspects, the quirky points about each individual. And second, I didn't, even if I knew, I couldn't really go and talk to you one-on-one, right? So there are 2-3 things that we are doing, right? And I think we see our own app itself as a marketing and advertising medium. So one of the things that we do is on the app itself, we have now driven and put in algorithms, which have taken, we started with like segmented home pages, but now the power is n equal to 1, right? So literally the feed that Tanya sees is very different from the feed that Sapna will see. Otherwise, normally we would have branded you as, modern urban women, and therefore they should be seeing the same thing. Right? But now your feed is actually informed by the actual past behavior of what you were shopping, right? And we were delighted that, we've sort of arrived and we've gotten it right. And then we realized that actually fashion is different. If I'm always showing you what you already liked, then I'm actually doing a disservice because fashion is also about discovery, right? And we found that the ideal algorithm in the space of fashion is actually looking at, what we've started to now call +-1 on fashion recommendations, right? So yes, I know you like denim and you traditionally buy like, the more conventional denim. So can I now recommend you distressed, right? So pushing the envelope a little bit and helping people discover is, again, a power that I don't think we could have done. It's actually our machine learning algorithms which have been able to do that, right? And as a marketer, I'm now using that power because my conversion rates are actually going up dramatically. Well, that's one example, right? Second, we then said, why limit it only to our app? Can we do something in the more traditional mediums of marketing, right? And I'd like to use one example here for that. Maybe first just share it, and then I'll explain what it's about. Can we play the Ashwin film?
Hi Priya, ஒரு செகண்ட் கூட வேஸ்ட் பண்ணாம இந்தியாவோட பிகெஸ்ட் ஃபேஷன் சேலுக்கு வாங்க. டிசம்பர் 22nd ல 25th வரைக்கும் மின்ட்ராவோட எண்ட் ஆஃப் ரீசன் சேலுக்கு வாங்க. உங்க ஃபேவரட் பிராண்ட்ஸ் எல்லாம் ஆஃபர்ஸா வாங்குங்க. கெட் ஸ்டைல் ரெடி வித் மின்த்ரா.
மின்த்ரா end of reason sale 22nd to 25th December. உங்கள் ஃபேவரட் பிராண்ட்களில் 50 to 80% வரை தள்ளுபடி.
So, of course, through the app, one can normally address only people who have already come to you. So if you want to reach out to the universe that's outside, and which is what the bigger task of a marketer's job is, we said, can we use technology? And this time round for our end of reason sale, we actually created 40,000 segments, right? It would have been impossible to do without data and without technology, but we were able to create 40,000 segments based on gender, based on the city you lived in, your language of preference, and we completely personalized it. And this is like, a very regular TV ad, which was done in a very personalized way. To top it up, we realized that in India, a lot of us have the same name. So it's not like I magically knew who Priya was, but we took a bet and we said, okay, which are the top 100 names that Indians have? And we got celebs to give us bites using those names. And then we used the power of, Google and Facebook to sort of take their help and get it driven to them. So, suddenly now here's Priya, and, and you won't believe it, that the click-through rates of campaigns, this campaign versus a regular ad is 5x, right? Because suddenly if somebody calls me by Gunjan, I'm going to notice, I'm going to click and I'm going to see, right? So I think that's one example of how we're being able to bring creativity and the power of all of this together. The second is, on the debate of saying, will this replace, human intelligence and creativity? I think the honest answer is we don't know. We are living in a very evolving world, but we are definitely seeing stuff which was considered the bastion of, totally creative people start to get challenged, right? And taking, therefore, a very controversial example on that, we've been able to create an entire fashion brand which uses no designers, right? And designers, much like the world of marketers, has been considered the bastion of only creative people, and that, it just can't be replicated by machines, and this is one thing that's secure. And I'm sharing it not to say that we all need to get scared, But I think we need to definitely reskill ourselves to be able to use the power of mediums like this, right? And how are we able to do it? It's basically now an algorithm which looks at what has been selling well, not just on our platforms, but it's constantly scanning the Instagrams and all the feeds globally to be able to predict what will become trend 2 months out. And no human is sort of involved in doing it. I mean, it's right now being able to perfect it only for men's polos, because of course it's much harder to do it still for women attire, but it's getting there. Right, so I think there is this, on one hand, I believe it can unleash a lot of creativity, but on the other hand, I think, yes, there is the genuine risk that if we just sit back and think that nothing is going to change, and that we can rest secure in our more traditionally creative, right? Because creativity can be in various ways skills, then some of us in this room may be in for a rude shock in a couple of years' time, yes.
Sapna, let me ask you, and I want you to wear your Googler's hat, as it were, for this one. Many people would imagine that because you work at Google and being Google, you're sort of at the forefront of all the technology disruptions, and you've got that data edge. Has that helped you tell better stories? And I'm also interested to know, from a marketing perspective, what are the day-to-day challenges that you folks, grapple with? And maybe if you can share some examples with us. I'm trying to squeeze in as many questions as I can. On, what have you done in terms of, say, tailor-making for India? Based on the data that you guys have, of course.
Yeah. So I think that's all very good questions. I think the thing about Google and what I do at Google, so let me just make sure everybody's aware. I basically, my team, we market Google's brand. So I'm not, I'm not on the tech side, I'm not on the sales side. So my team is marketing Google products like YouTube, Maps, Search, etc. And we're trying to do what every other marketer is doing, is drive more users, more user engagement, etc. And when we think about how things have changed, and yes, my team and we have access to the best of the best internally when it comes to programmatic and media buying. And when we think about our own tools, I have resources that others don't have. But when I think about how my team starts, everything that we do, it starts with storytelling. Mm-hmm. And some of the best work that we've gotten recognition for, a Pakistan-India reunion ad that we did many years ago, that was all about storytelling. And it came, and it touched so many people in terms of having a strong insight that was rooted in how every Indian feels and based on our history. Similarly, most recently, we're doing a Maps campaign, and our insight was that Indians are always late, right? And like case in point this morning, we're starting 40 minutes late. So Indians are always late, and there's this, everybody says bus 5 minutes, right? I'll be there in 5 minutes. And we took that insight and we applied it to the work that we're doing. And similarly to Gunjan, we have many different creative formats that know what's happening at what time, what's the weather, where somebody is, heat maps that we've built throughout the cities to say where is traffic so that we can push the right message at the right time. But ultimately, if it didn't come to that story that we were telling about the core insights of how Indians behave at that right moment, it wouldn't have gotten attention. And I'll tell you this, we do a lot of work. The work that we get recognized for always comes back to these insights and these stories that we need to tell. So the challenge that you were saying is, what are the challenges that we have day to day? The challenges that we have day to day are how do you marry both of these in a world that's being disrupted very fast? And even at Google, you might say I have the best. It's a challenge to find people that are skilled in digital today the way that we might need them to be, because we are in a place where everything is leapfrogging so fast, right? I would say if I look at the U.S. where I spent much of my time, we had time to learn over, as digital was kind of being penetrated in the market, and we could upskill our teams. My biggest challenge right now is India is leapfrogging. The move to digital is happening so fast. These technologies are not necessarily easy to understand, and so that requires us to spend time reskilling, investing, things that we probably as marketers weren't spending a lot of time on. And to answer your last question around building things just for India, I would say what's great about being at Google right now is because of the internet boom that we're seeing and the user growth that India is experiencing, everybody sitting in our headquarters is actually only looking at India right now. And so we've built products just for India, which is not something that we've done elsewhere. One of them in particular, YouTube. You can watch YouTube offline. Never happened anywhere in the world where you can watch. It's a product that requires you to be online, but now you can actually see offline, and it's been built just for India. But when we thought about how to market it, it all again came back to what's the core insight. The core insight is that buffering sucks, right? And so if you have to watch something that's buffering, it sucks. And so we built a campaign that really went deep into that human insight of what people hated about the technology. And so ultimately, you need to, again, I don't want to sound like a record player, but we need to think about the marriage of art and creativity.
Rashi, your challenges, as it were, must be pretty different, right? Because unlike the Googles and the Myntras, FMCG is traditionally a sort of offline space. So to that extent, do you think you have a lot of catching up to do?
So I think our biggest challenge is that Google doesn't share data with us. And we, yeah, so, and we don't know how to measure it, but anyway, jokes aside, so I think our industry is built very differently, and we have a lot of assets on ground, and I would guess a number, we need to sell 1 billion packs a day, and probably not even then break even. So our power comes from our brands. I think the FMCG industry has caught up, because the best marketers are doing sort of mass personalized creatives. So we make our mainstays still television advertising because of the scale. But we are doing programmatic buying at scale. We are adapting our assets to suit the Googles and Facebooks of the world. The other thing that we've started doing is, in our industry, stakeholders are really important. For example, the distributors, the retailers. So earlier we used to take print ads to tell them, yes, we are supporting the brand, now please stock our goods. Now what we are doing is we are targeting them on Facebook with our advertising. So I think we are being forced to change way faster now. And I do believe now we can no longer ignore digital, and it has become a part of our life. The other place where I think it could really help us is AI, where, when we are forecasting our production, when our sales guys are going door to door, shop to shop, selling our wares, AI could actually guide them on what to sell where, and when to produce what and how much.
Gunjan, I'm also interested to know, because Myntra was one of the first few to go app only. What are your learnings from that experience?
So I think, we had several learnings from that experience. It actually did happen before my era. But I think what it did was fundamentally challenge the status quo at that point in time. And what it also made sure is that organizationally, everybody came together to build the most superlative experience possible. And to your point, to create as much of a substitute for physical touch feel that you get in the app experience, right? And I think today the bar is again going up quite a lot, because there's AR and so on that's coming into play. But for that time, the app was at least 3 years ahead of what most other platforms were offering, right? And that, therefore, the biggest learning was that the consumers are willing to go and experience that, and it led to the unleashing of our app downloads, right? Having said that, I would personally not advise people to sort of do that. For the simple reason that ultimately, as a marketer, our job is also to create choice, right? And therefore, and for that reason, we did open up our web channels again later. But the tech investments and the experience in the app is still 3 to 5x better, right? And that is the real strategy, that make sure that the channels that you believe are the channels of the future are where bulk of your investment and time is going. But there's no need to sort of force people to say, okay, you can only take the red door and the blue door is marked with a cross, right? So I think that's really where we've ended up. But it's been fascinating because I think for that time and era, it was definitely a very bold move, and it totally paid out because it led to almost 3x, 4x adoption of online fashion shopping itself, which otherwise would have taken a much longer time in India.
Okay, I've got 4 minutes left on the timer, so I thought we'd open it up. Great. The gentleman right here on the 4th row. Can somebody hand him a mic? You can take mine. Oh, okay. Someone's coming with a mic, yeah.
Hi, my name is... Hello?
Yes, we can help.
My name is Manish from Skrilla. I just have an observation that typically creativity is one-on-one mapped with storytelling, and technology is about processes. But the way I feel is that technology actually has its genesis in creativity. So search was created because somebody thought creatively about an algorithm as to how to look the web world. Airbnb and Uber was creatively thinking about how to use free capacity. So I personally don't think there is this demarcation or polarized view between creativity and technology, but one feeds on the other, and the world moves forward and we evolve. So I would just like the take on that from the panel.
Yeah, I think at some point, all of them did say that it's a coming together of both, right? And I think what we're talking about is how to marry the two in a very sort of productive way. But if you ladies, I mean, anyone can take this if you want to.
Yeah, no, I think, we pretty much, each of us in our own ways is trying to tread that same story, right? And it's a little bit of like, the chicken came first or the egg came first. But frankly, I don't think it matters. What matters is that today we are armed with technology, we are armed with data, and we are armed with the human insight and creativity. So let's use all of those and, unleash them into creating, stuff which could be products, services, or advertising, which is just absolutely brilliant.
Rashi, wanted to add something to it?
Yeah, I'll just very quickly add something. So completely, absolutely agree with you. And I think the gold coin in this, or really the unlock, is people, right? We need people who can think both ways, the tours and the dinkers, as they say. And those are the kinds of people who unlock it.
Yeah, I'll just say, I mean, we agree, focus on the user, the rest will follow. And technology, when it relates to marketing, especially at Google, we don't look at our jobs as just creating campaigns and driving user growth, right? Ultimately, the most successful marketers are the ones that can push product to think about solving for real problems. So that's how our products, like you said, search, everything that we do comes back to that user insight. So ultimately, it's not one or the other. So I would never hire somebody that doesn't think that their job isn't to push the boundary on what the user needs from the product itself.
Hi, I'm Himanshi from Reebok. While Rashi mentioned, we are also a consumer goods company, and we are moving away from the traditional marketing. As somebody who has franchisees across the country, I face the same question that, they want me to take print, and I'm like, maybe that's not the best, way of me to put my investment in. On the other hand, the CEO or the head of that same print company comes and tells me that, look, Google and Facebook are also using me to advertise, the biggest technology companies in the world. So, how can you not take print when they themselves are putting their buck on me? So my question is actually to you, Sapna, that how are you guys looking at offline marketing, and what is the sort of ROI that you are seeing between that offline and online? As the company whose head has said that we are not going to do TV anymore, I really want to understand that am I doing the right thing by completely moving away from something like TV and going into digital?
So I get this question every day in my office as well. So here's the thing. So my budgets, I won't share the exact dimensions, but I'll tell you more than half of my budget is on digital. Okay, I won't give you the exact number. And if you look at the market right now, we're talking about, the market's at 12 to 14% digital, right? So I, as a CMO, and my philosophy would never tell anybody that they should not be in any other channel other than digital. my objectives are to get new internet users on board, right? To get what we're calling the next billion users online. So for me to reach those next billion users for some of my products, I have to be on TV, right? So if to get somebody who's not online to start searching, I need to be there. But for my other products, if you look at my campaigns for maps, there my objective is different. It's to drive daily engagement from people that are already online. I will only primarily be on digital. So strategy has to be built and media plans have to be built for their objectives. Some of my campaigns will be digital only and perform exceedingly well. Some of them need offline channels, and it's all about creating that, again, the master media plan that will work the hardest for you. So I don't think there's one size fits all to this, and so you have to look at your product, what makes sense, where you're going to drive the ROI, and push bases that. And I'm happy to chat more after this because, yeah, it's a perennial question. But I as a CMO, I wouldn't tell any CMO, give up every other channel, and I wouldn't. It's just but are you being the most effective on your plans if you're only on TV, would be the question.
Any questions? Yes.
Hi, this is Mohammed from Progina. I got a question for Sapna. India doesn't have a GDPR and any regulations. So consciously, are you people doing something which does not violate the privacy? So do you have that in mind that, it shouldn't be a good problem to have people complaining like other social media had in the past? So what does Google do where there are no regulations, especially in the markets like India?
So our philosophies globally around privacy are the same. So we don't have, we don't look at it country by country. So in terms of user rights, security, data sharing, what we do in the US is what we would do in India as well. So we don't want to take advantage of a market just because they haven't established the rules of the trade. We look at it across.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time, so we're going to wrap this discussion up. Thank you so much, each one of you. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks a lot. Let's just hear it for them.